What's up, and welcome into Fantasy Baseball today on Tuesday, July 18th. I am Frank Stampfl, joined by Scott White. Today on the show, we had the return of Grayson Rodriguez and Shane McClanahan. We're going to fire up the Drop-O-Meter, Team Name Tuesday, and much more. Before we get started, please like this video and subscribe on YouTube if you haven't already. And if you're listening on the audio side, download, follow, and leave a 5-star rating on Apple or Spotify. Scotty! Sick shirt, man. Matt Lana.
Yeah.
Now you're all in? You're all in on Matt Olson now? Huh?
Matt Lana. It depends if you're talking about from a fandom perspective or from a fantasy perspective or a versus Freddie Freeman perspective. I'm in on Matt Olson from one of those perspectives. I mean, I did have him as a second rounder in my redraft, so I mean, to a certain extent, I guess I'm in on him as from a fantasy perspective too. But no, I mean, look, I feel like I have a responsibility to have a certain number of baseball themed shirts to wear on this podcast, so that I don't have the baseball decor behind me. I have my grandmother's living room behind me. It's not really my grandmother's living room. That's just what people call it. It's actually my own living room, believe it or not. But because of that, I have to make it, festive in other ways. And that's with the occasional baseball themed t-shirt. Shout out to RotoWear.
Yes, for sure.
I paid my own good money for it, but they make a good product.
They sure do. No, they actually do. And I was talking with Kenny Cashman, who runs RotoWear. He does a great job. I was talking with him out at First Pitch, Florida, and he's a great dude. And I had a lot of fun talking to him. And yes, support his product because I think he does a great job. Scott, I too am wearing a baseball shirt. You might not realize it. It just looks like a tie-dye shirt. But there is a team logo just below where you can see. Would you like to guess what team this is?
The New York Yankees.
No, it's not the Yankees.
Oh, it's Yankees colors.
It's
very boring for tie-dye, I have to say.
It's like a black tie-dye shirt, completely random.
Colorado Rockies. Okay.
I don't know why. I saw it somewhere on the internet. I get sucked into these like Instagram ads, and then I'm like, yeah, that's a pretty cool shirt. And I just wind up buying it. So anywho, that's where we're at. Let's jump in.
I don't believe it. My.
All right, Scott. Oh my goodness gracious. Player of the night.
I guess I have to go with Nick Pivetta here, the Olive Garden breadstick of the day. Not 12 no-hit innings. That would be crazy. 6 no-hit innings against the Athletics in Oakland. Struck out 12 in those 6 no-hit innings. Interestingly, it wasn't a quality start because it wasn't a start at all. He followed an opener and gave the Red Sox 6 no-hit innings with 12 strikeouts. Pretty amazing there for Nick Pivetta. Some of the other stats, 18 swinging strikes on 87 pitches, very impressive. 8 of them on the fastball itself. I always like that. His last 4 appearances, none of them starts, but the shortest of those 4 appearances was 3 1/3 innings. So he's kind of become like this bulk reliever, basically providing starter workload, but technically not starting. In his last 4 appearances like that, Nick Pivetta has a 2.45 ERA, a 0.76 WHIP, and 16.2 K per 9.
Jeez.
I tried to figure out what's going on, what's changed for him. I didn't see much. The velocity's up a little, most notably on the slider, but even that hasn't been terribly consistent over those last 4 appearances, and yet the production has been really good. You go back a few years, and Nick Pivetta was the kind of the trendy breakout pick in fantasy, the mid-round starting pitcher. This was back when he was on the Phillies, the mid-round starting pitcher that everybody had to have. So maybe he's starting to live up to that long-lost potential, is Nick Pivetta. I'm very skeptical, but you got to point out what's going on with him because it's been pretty impressive.
Indeed, it has. I know it's obviously correlated here with his move to the bullpen. You mentioned he's been throwing a few more innings recently. He's gone 4+ innings in relief in his last 3 outings. So getting a few more opportunities. He allows a lot of hard contact, but lots of strikeouts, lots of swinging strikes. recently for Nick Pivetta. He's 25% rostered. I'm just trying to figure out what's his utility for fantasy at this point, right, Scott?
It's a wait and see. It's a wait and see, unless you play in a very deep league.
Yeah, so it's probably AL only, maybe a 15-team mixed roto league, something like that. But outside of that, let's see where it goes from here. Nick Pivetta, but obviously it was a fantastic outing here against the A's. 13 strikeouts and 18 swinging strikes for him, as was Griffin Canning. A great outing up against the Yankees. Well, mixed outing. Let's go with mixed outing because lots of strikeouts, but it wasn't the most efficient, I guess you could say. 5 2/3 innings, 2 runs allowed, 3 walks, 12 strikeouts, 20 swinging strikes on a career high 120 pitches. The Angels bullpen apparently has been used a ton recently this past weekend. So they needed to ride Griffin Canning. They left him out there, threw a bunch of pitches, also got a bunch of strikeouts against, a lowly Yankees lineup right now. It's without Aaron Judge, they obviously have not been very good, but did a few things differently in this one. He faded his changeup, mostly four-seam, fastball, and slider for Griffin Canning. His last 2 starts before this were not very good. This is a great start, Scott, but I don't know how actionable it is because you look at the grand scheme, right, for Canning, and it's a 4.52 ERA and a 1.23 WHIP. He's up over a strikeout per inning. He gets swings and misses, but I think he's probably just in that matchup streamer category for now, until we see more consistency at least.
Yeah, and a difficult one as he's in a 6-man rotation. I noticed. I think our own site had him listed as a 2-star. I guess it depends what you mean by our own site. My 2-star pitcher rankings that I published did not have him listed as a 2-star pitcher since he's part of a 6-man rotation. But if you look at the little ball indicators on the set lineups page, they did show Griffin Canning as a 2-star pitcher. And so you may have started him. And if so, it worked out because he delivered this good start. But I don't think he's making a second start this week. I do love a good swinging strike rate. That is something Griffin Canning has long showed a knack for. But otherwise, yeah, I mean, not providing a lot to get excited about. Otherwise, 9 base runners in 5 2/3 innings, even in this start, very high WHIP for all those strikeouts that he got. So I agree. I think there is a potential outcome for Griffin Canning that's worthwhile, but he hasn't shown enough this year for me to move in on him despite this 12 strikeout performance.
Yeah, we've talked about him a few times this year where, Griffin Canning kind of pops up here and there with these pretty good starts, but overall he is allowing a lot of hard contact this season. So when he's not getting whiffs, he is getting hit hard. I did want to quickly look into his pitch mix. The slider is really good, but everything else is kind of blah. All right, we'll watch it. We'll see where it goes from here with Griffin Canning. Wanted to quickly touch on the pitcher on the other side of that game, and it was Luis Severino. Just wanted to point out some things that I thought were kind of interesting in this one. Obviously, it's his best start in a while. 6 innings of 1-run ball, 3 strikeouts to 3 walks, but he had 13 swinging strikes on 98 pitches, and 5 of them came on the slider, which I thought was interesting because we've talked about how the slider has been really bad for Luis Severino for most of the season, and he used that pitch more. He nearly doubled the slider usage in this start. Mentioned the 5 whiffs, a 45% whiff rate, 38% CSW on that pitch. So I think it's just kind of a wait and see for now, Scott. 71% rostered. So some people are out dropping Luis Severino, which I think is fine with how bad he's been. But if this slider continues to...
Well, we told everybody to do that for Grayson Rodriguez. So
Yeah. And I think rightfully so. But if the slider, continues to work out over his next couple of starts, then maybe Severino could get, back into a groove here, I guess.
Yeah. So what was interesting about his pitch selection and usage was the cutter, because normally he threw it was up 2.7 miles per hour just in terms of individual pitch characteristics. That was the biggest difference I saw for Luis Severino in this one. Nearly 3 miles per hour up on that cutter. And also the spin rate was much lower, which is interesting because usually when velocity goes up, so does spin rate. When velocity goes down, so does spin rate. But They went opposite directions, way up on the velocity, way down on the spin rate. The spin rate, the new spin rate on that cutter, very close to matching the slider. Still a separation on the velocity, even more because the velocity was up on the cutter, as I said. But I wonder if those changes that he made to the cutter made it look more like the slider, and that helped the slider to play up. So of the 13 swinging strikes Severino got, 5 came on the slider, 4 came on the cutter, 9 of the 13 on those 2 pitches. And so maybe that's something that can fuel a turnaround for Severino. I agree. I'm not looking to get him back in my lineup yet. His previous 7 starts at 9.48 ERA. But this was, the most encouraging start we've seen from him in a long time.
And Luis Severino is slated to face the Royals this weekend. So, as we've mentioned many times, right-handed pitchers, really anybody, against the Royals have performed pretty well. So, if he makes it 2 good starts in a row, then who knows? Maybe we're, slowly gaining a little confidence here in Luis Severino. I guess let's just stick with that game and kind of get all of it out of the way. Shohei Ohtani, clutch 2-run home run late in that one. And Scott, did you have the pleasure of watching the bat flip on that home run yet?
No, that just happened, right?
It was, maybe 20, 30 minutes ago, something like that. But just do a quick Twitter search because that bat flip was tremendous stuff there. Game is currently tied in the 9th inning, so we'll see what happens between the Yankees and the Angels.
Got a lot of vertical, a lot of rotation on that bat flip.
Good stuff there.
It wasn't like a Jose Bautista, which was more like a bat spike, like he was spiking a football. It wasn't that kind of bat flip.
It was the one where you kind of take the knob and you flip it backwards.
Yeah, like you're a baton twirler leading the parade.
Good stuff there from Ohtani, his league-leading 35th home run of the season. Let's talk about some pitching returns. Shane O'Mac.
Here comes the money.
Here we go. Money talk.
Here comes the money.
Shane McClanahan turns in a quality start in his return at the Texas Rangers. 6 innings of 2-run ball with 6 strikeouts and 0 walks. He had 11 swinging strikes on 69 pitches. Before the start, his manager, Kevin Cash, said that Shane McClanahan would not be limited, but they only let him throw 69 pitches. They got their 6 innings out of him. I guess they were, just pleased with that. The velocity was up in this one. Fastball up nearly 1 mile per hour. The curve was up 2 miles per hour. The slider was up 3 miles per hour. So all in all, Scott, I would say this was a pretty encouraging return for Shane O'Mac.
Yeah, I was happy to see it. And, the fact it came at Texas and their juggernaut of a lineup, I think makes it all the more impressive. So successful return. And I imagine you got him back active anyway, but this is all the more reason to, if you haven't yet.
Speaking of that Rangers lineup, before this start, they ranked 2nd in all of baseball in WOBA against left-handed pitching. So, this was a very tough matchup, and Shane McClanahan looked great in his return. Could the same thing be said for Grayson Rodriguez? Let's talk about it. 5+ innings pitched. He got left out there into the 6th inning, and at the time, he allowed 2 earned runs, and he left with 2 runners on base. And unfortunately, Orioles reliever, I think it was Brian Baker, would later give up a grand slam. So the final line for Grayson Rodriguez, 5+ innings, 4 runs allowed, 4 strikeouts with 10 swinging strikes on 91 pitches. The good here, the velocity was up across the board. His fastball up 1.2 miles per hour. His slider up 2.4 miles per hour. Spin rates also up across the board. The bad here, still allowed a lot of hard contact. That was a very big problem for Grayson Rodriguez earlier. Along with the lack of control, it was a lot of hard contact. He gave up 8 hard hits in this game, 91.9 average exit velocity against. Did manage to throw 65% of his pitches for strikes. I think that was encouraging for Grayson Rodriguez as well. Scott, overall, your thoughts here on the complete package in his return against the Dodgers?
Well, I hoped for more. Obviously, you always hope for the best. But there's enough encouraging here that I'm not going to abandon ship if I picked up Grayson Rodriguez. As you mentioned, the velocity was up significantly across the board. Let's see. Fastball and changeup. Really, he mostly threw fastballs and changeups. Between the 2 pitches, 82%.
Yeah.
And the velocity was up 1.2 miles per hour on both. His third most used pitch was a slider, which was up 2.4 miles per hour. He only threw it 8 times, though. And I think that might be an adjustment he needs to make because he has a deep arsenal. I know one of the things he was sent down to work on was the shape of his breaking pitches. That may have been something that suffered with the lat injury that he suffered last June. Remember, I mentioned yesterday he hadn't until that return stint in the minors in this June. He hadn't looked like himself since that lat injury last June, and he basically said the same thing after this start. Grayson Rodriguez said he felt a little more confident coming into the game, and that time back at AAA Norfolk helped him get back to the pitcher that I know I am. But the pitcher that I know he is can throw the slider a lot more than that, can throw a curveball too, and that might help to reduce some of the hard contact. That said, it was his first start back. He might have been taking it a little easy, not wanting to do too much, just wanting to get to find his comfort zone in the majors, something that he hadn't found yet. And he was facing a really good Dodgers lineup. So like I said, enough positive here from Grayson Rodriguez that I definitely want to see more, but it wasn't the best case scenario, clearly.
Yeah, we are obviously a hold on Grayson Rodriguez. Let's see where he goes from here as well. Let's talk about all those other prospects, which we mentioned on yesterday's podcast. The Reds game, unfortunately, got suspended in the 8th inning, but we did get some at-bats. Obviously, we got a lineup card out of the Reds. What happened with Christian Encarnacion-Strand in the lineup? Spencer Steer got the day off. Thought that was interesting. Ellie De La Cruz moved up to lead off in the lineup. Matt McLain was batting 3rd. Jonathan India was dropped to 5th. And then he went 3 for 3 with his 14th home run. So nice little outing there for him. And then Encarnacion-Strand was batting 7th in this one. He was the DH, and he went 0 for 2. He had a ground ball out, 93.4 exit velocity, and then a lazy fly ball. But I thought it was interesting, Scott. I wonder if kind of what I said about yesterday, where maybe Steer gets one day off a week, Votto gets a day off here or there, India gets a day off, and it'll just be a rotation just so that they can, get Christian Encarnacion-Strand those at-bats, obviously.
Yeah, the player who complicates the picture is Will Benson, who's come on recently and performed well, gotten on base a lot, hit for power, 862 OPS. That was the 3rd highest OPS in the Reds lineup today. I don't know that I believe in Will Benson long-term, but, there was a time not too long ago where I would have said TJ Friedel was about to fade hard, and that still hasn't happened. I think what Will Benson has done so far earns him at least a semi-regular role for the foreseeable future. And so that's what led to Spencer Steer being bumped from the lineup in this one. I don't think Spencer Steer's out of a job or anything like that. I think there's going to be a lot of mixing and matching until somebody gets hurt or fades. Again, I think Benson is the most likely candidate to fade, but it hasn't happened yet. Does that mean Encarnacion-Strand himself doesn't play quite every day? I imagine so. I imagine he'll be the one out of the lineup sometimes. But as usual with this situation, if he performs like we expect him to, then that'll stop and he'll just be playing a ton.
Yeah, speaking of this Red situation, it kind of makes me think of the Orioles too, because we've been receiving some questions and they just have a glut of players right now too. Jordan Westberg hasn't started the past 2 days. Colton Cowser only started 1 game over the weekend as well. So they kind of have their issues too with, Ryan O'Hearn coming along. He's been playing well. Aaron Hicks has been playing well.
They have a lot of dud bats though. They have players they insist on starting, even though I don't see the justification for it, unlike in the case of Will Benson. But yes, they have crowded out some interesting bats, even if it isn't as deserved as in the Reds case.
Yeah. How did the Pirates prospects do in their debuts? Not so good. Andy Rodriguez was batting 7th in the lineup. He went 0 for 4 with 3 strikeouts. Leover Paguero was batting 9th for the Pirates. He went 0 for 3 with 2 strikeouts. That's actually not Paguero's debut. He debuted last year, but first time we've seen him this year. And Quinn Priester, he started well and then fell apart, unfortunately. Up against the Guardians, 5 1/3 innings, 7 hits, 7 runs allowed. He gave up 2 homers. He had 7 swinging strikes on 73 pitches. He threw 6 different pitches in the arsenal here. Curveball had a solid spin rate. I know that's been touted as his best pitch, but obviously he's got a pretty bad outing, and I don't think we're doing much with Quinn Priester after this one.
No, I wasn't that interested in picking him up in the first place, and this obviously didn't change that. I would say the most interesting of those 3 by far is still Indy Rodriguez, and there are major questions for him too. But one question has seemingly been answered here. His manager said that he will get the majority of the starts behind the plate, and that Austin Hedges is only going to start a couple times a week. So Andy Rodriguez appears to be the Pirates catcher for now. If he hits so poorly, he's not a great defender, as I understand it. Certainly not good at controlling the running game. So he needs to hit to stick around. And as I said, that was an issue for him at AAA this year. But he's shown the ability to hit well in previous minor league seasons, and the Pirates are obviously hopeful. Not a good debut, but in 2 catcher leagues, I would say Andy Rodriguez needs to be rostered.
All right, let's take our first break. And when we return, we'll talk about some waiver wire hitters, the drop-o-meter, and much more right after this.
In case you're new here, we're here to make history. We are more than the names on our back. We're the team on the front, the country on our shoulders, the city behind us, and the fire inside us. The best in the world. We got us. We don't just play the world's game. We run it.
Welcome back. And the attacking third started out in the CBS Sports podcast family, and this week became a full-fledged show on the CBS Sports Golazo Network. If you want all the latest in women's soccer, including comprehensive coverage of the U.S. women's national team in the World Cup, tune into Attacking Third 3 times a week on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time on the Golazo Network. And if you missed that, don't worry. That show is still distributed to all your favorite podcast platforms. Let's talk some waiver wire hitters here, Scott. And we'll start off with Jeimer Candelario, who went 2 for 4 with his 14th home run after missing the previous 3 games with a thumb injury. And he's quietly put together a solid season. 263 batting average, 14 home runs, 5 steals, and 826 OPS for Candelario, 66% rostered. Do you think that number needs to be higher? Because at that point, we're probably just looking at a must-roster player in Candelario.
I mean, I don't have a lot of confidence in it continuing. I still see him as more of like a corner infield type in roto leagues than somebody I want as my third baseman. And so that roster rate is, I guess, appropriate considering. For instance, I'd rather have Christian Encarnacion Strand than him. And Encarnacion Strand, I think I got him like 18th in my third base rankings rest of season. Like it's kind of a crowded position, you know, for all the concerns over the how shallow it was coming into the year. It's definitely been the deeper of the 2 corner infield positions.
Yeah, that's fair. I moved Candelario up quite a bit last week, and I still only got him up to 24th in my third base rankings too. So yeah, I agree. I've got Encarnacion Strand at 19. I mentioned yesterday just behind Matt Chapman, but you know, if you wanted to take Encarnacion Strand over Chapman, I think that's totally fine to do.
I mean, the fact you have Matt Chapman 18th.
Yeah. He's been bad.
I understand he hasn't hit many home runs since April, but still, he's Matt Chapman.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just rip the name off the back of the jersey at this point in the season, right, Scott? It's just, you know, you got to go with whoever's performing. And someone who performed on Monday was Keibert Ruiz, who went 3 for 3 with his 11th home run. He is batting .235 with a 679 OPS. Frankly, more power this season than I thought he was going to provide. He only has a 9% strikeout rate this season, which I think has fueled these expected stats, Scott, because the XBA 277, that looks very good. The X-Slug 451, that looks great for Keibert Ruiz. But I think those numbers are inflated because of how low Keibert Ruiz's strikeout rate is. This is now 2 seasons in a row where he's vastly underperformed these expected numbers. He just might be one of those players. Does that make sense? Are you buying my theory here?
I mean, he makes some weak contact. And I was saying on yesterday's show, I'm to the point where I think quality of contact is the most important single measure in a hitter. It's not the only measure that matters, but it is the single most important. So I think, you know what? His quality of contact isn't quite as bad as I thought. 50th percentile for max exit velocity, 36th percentile for average exit velocity. I mean, it's not good, but it's not, you know, a third of the league is worse in terms of average exit velocity. That's what percentile rankings are. I guess I'll just put it this way. Keibert Ruiz is a fine emergency choice at catcher in points leagues because of how little he strikes at. And obviously he's worth rostering in 2 catcher leagues just because there's a lot of catcher spots to fill.
Yep. I'm looking at the rankings now. You and I both have Keibert Ruiz ranked exactly at 16 at catcher. So he's a high-end catcher too, but you know, I don't know that there's much upside, at least now, for Keibert Ruiz. 2 middle infielders that performed quite well on Monday. Oswald Peraza, we mentioned, recalled by the Yankees on Sunday. He got the chance to hit leadoff, and last I saw was performing quite well. He had a hit, he had 3 walks, and his 4th stolen base of the season. He's 18% rostered. The other name is Edouard Julien, who went 3 for 4 with a walk and his 2nd steal. Currently batting the quietest, 298 with an 898 OPS. Does strike out a lot. Yeah, look, he's been really good against righties, but that it kind of, I guess the analysis kind of starts and ends there, because the Minnesota Twins, they're not going to play him against lefties. They probably shouldn't, based on how bad he's been against lefties in the minors as well. But when he plays against righties, he's really good. He's kind of like Jock Peterson at the second base position. I don't know. Who'd you rather have, Scott? Edouard Julien or Oswald Peraza?
I'd rather have Julien. I've been the loudest supporter of Julien. And yeah, the strikeout rate is very high enough that I'd pretty much point it out for any other hitter. But look, as far as lefties, righties, you know, how much will he strike out? He's a rookie. Let's not forget. I understand he's been up multiple times just this year, but he's a rookie and his career could go in all sorts of directions from here. We don't really know. This is an encouraging start to it, though. He's providing power and on-base skills at second base. And because of those on-base skills, he's batting high in the lineup against righties. I mean, maybe the strikeout rate, if it continues, will sink him. But as things stand now, Edouard Julien looks like the best hitter the Twins have. So that's only going to increase the pressure to keep him in the lineup as they tried to hold on to first place in the AL Central. So I think he's pretty good. I think there's a chance he gets even better. Like it would be hard to improve that batting average and OPS, but like he improves in other ways that make that batting average and OPS more believable, I guess is how I put it.
Yeah, probably in terms of like what quality of contact and things like that.
Right, and how much contact he makes.
Yeah.
Peraza, I mean, the fact he was batting leadoff and starting at third base, and the report today that Josh Donaldson might be out for the season, those are all good signs for his value too. I mean, he looked like the big walks guy today with 3 of them, right?
Actually, update 4 walks for Oswald Peraza.
So he's the French emperor of walks. The name doesn't really work as well for him as for Julien, but and he brings an element of speed that Julien doesn't really. I know he hit for power in the minors, did Peraza. I think it's more questionable whether he will in the majors. But I certainly understand the incentive to pick up Oswald Peraza at this point. If you need speed specifically, he's probably your guy between the two. Overall, though, I would say I like Julien more.
And I hope I'm wrong about Julien because, yeah, I'm being a little bit harsh on him. If he's this good against righties, then it really might not matter what he does against left-handed pitching. So we'll see where the playing time goes for him. I think as a result, I would probably lean with Peraza because I think I trust the playing time a little bit more. And obviously he comes with some prospect pedigree as well. But both guys look like they're going to be pretty good moving forward. Last name on this list, and we spoke about him a lot recently. Just wanted to mention what he did once again on Monday. Dane Myers went 3 for 4 with a run, scored back-to-back 3-hit games, and he now has multiple hits in 6 of his first 10 games with the Marlins here. 15% rostered. Again, the name Dane Myers, someone you can look at in deeper 5 outfielder leagues. So if you want to add players, who are we dropping, Scott? It's time to fire up the drop-o-meter. 10 on the drop-o-meter means you can drop this player in all leagues. 1, you want to hold in all leagues. So let's see where we fall on some of these guys. Emmett Sheehan. Do we need to hold on to Emmett Sheehan? He was at the Orioles. He allowed 4 runs over 5 innings pitched. He had more walks than strikeouts, 3 walks to 2 strikeouts, only 4 swinging strikes. And at this moment, he's made 5 starts, a 4.91 ERA, a 1.17 whip, 6.3 K per 9, 3.9 walks per 9, 10% swinging strike rate. So I know he had those first 2 starts, Scott, that were really good. The first one was 6 no-hit innings. Still 70% rostered. How are you feeling about Emmett Sheehan?
Not great, Bob.
Agreed.
I expected a lot more swing and miss. And as I was saying for Edward Julian, he's a rookie. His career could go in so many different ways from here. I think it's unfair to judge the kind of pitcher, to judge based on what we've seen so far, the kind of pitcher Sheehan's going to be for like the rest of his career. So in dynasty leagues, I'm not suggesting you bail on him or anything like that. The Dodgers obviously hurried him to the big leagues because he was so dominant at AA and very briefly at AAA, right? He just had a quick layover there before coming up to the majors. I think the clincher with Sheehan is that he is already at kind of a breaking point with the innings. I was actually writing about pitchers with innings concerns just earlier today, so this is fresh on my mind. I've just done the research. So he's already at 74 innings is Sheehan between the majors and minors this year. Last year he threw 68. 68's his career high. So he's already exceeded his career high in innings, and we have almost half a season to go still. Like if they want Sheehan to be part of their postseason plans, the Dodgers, they're probably going to have to move him to the bullpen sooner than later. So between that and the lack of strikeouts we've seen, I would give Sheehan, let's call him a 5 on the drop-o-meter. I may bump that number up depending on how I score some of the rest of these players. Got to get it. It's hard to calibrate it right off the bat.
Would you drop him for Grayson Rodriguez?
Yes.
Okay, Grayson Rodriguez is up to 73% rostered. He was the second most added pitcher from the weekend. Another starter coming in just a little bit that I'll ask you about, but I'm going to wait on that one. Josh Lowe went 2 for 3 with his 13th home run. That was just his second home run since May 22nd. So it's been kind of a power drought here for Josh Lowe. During that stretch, 40 games played, only batting .235, the 2 home runs, 10 steals. Obviously that helps, but the strikeout rate has climbed to 32% over that 40-game stretch. He's still 91% rostered. Should he be? Where is Josh Lowe on the drop-o-meter?
Obviously lower in 5 outfielder leagues. I feel like you have to give 2 separate scores at this position. So 5 outfielder leagues, I'll put it at a 3, which is not nothing.
I was going to say 2, but yeah, that's
and in 3 outfielder leagues, I'll put Josh Lowe at like a 9. I mean, he could get hot again like he was earlier this season, and everybody's picking him up, but playing for the Rays puts him at a real disadvantage. This was only his 4th start in July. So
I know there was something going on. I think bereavement list or something like that. He was away from the team for a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
He does sit more regularly than you'd like, though, either way.
Right.
And so okay. I'll make it more like a 8 in 3 outfielder leagues then. But need to see a lot more of this to get interested in starting him again in that format.
The most added outfielder on CBS is Jarren Duran. Would you make that move? I know he's heated back up, but he also is not playing every day.
Yeah, right. And I do think I like Lowe's skill set overall more. I mean, if it was a question of I need somebody to start this week, should I drop Lowe for Duran so that I have somebody to start for this week? Okay. But if it's just who's going to be better rest of season, I'll bet on Lowe still.
Two names that are pretty highly rostered. Riley Green, 78%, Jake Fraley, 77%. Would you drop Josh Lowe for either of those two?
Yes.
Yeah. Jake Fraley, by the way, I mean, his roto ranking this season, I think he's a top 20 outfielder. He's played really well. I know in points leagues, upside is a little bit limited because he doesn't play every day either. But
even so, it's surprising how productive he's been in points leagues. I dropped. Actually, it didn't go through because I got outbid on Fraley, but I was prepared to drop Marcell Ozuna for Fraley in a 3 outfielder points league. Let's see. Well, I mean, he's outscored Brian Reynolds this year. I know Reynolds had an IL stint recently, but basically the same number of games. And since Fraley himself, Fraley himself had an IL stint, and since returning from that, he's been especially productive. He's been like a top 15 outfielder in points leagues since returning in, when was it? Mid-June, which I guess is only about a month. But in that month back, he's been like a top 15 outfielder in points leagues. Entered Monday batting .292 with a .964 OPS during that stretch.
Yeah, he's been great. Jake Fraley has been great, along with many of those Cincinnati Reds players. Mackenzie Gore has been struggling for quite some time now. He went into Chicago facing the Cubs, 6 1/3 innings, 5 runs allowed, did have 6 strikeouts, also gave up 2 home runs in this game. His fastball velocity was actually down 1.2 miles per hour, which is not good for Mackenzie Gore because he relies on his fastball a lot. More than 60% of the time has Mackenzie Gore thrown his fastball this season. And over his last 7 starts, he has a 6.47 ERA and a 1.5 whip, still 74% rostered. Scott, Mackenzie Gore on the drop-o-meter.
That's pretty much a 10, I would say. 5 runs or more in 4 of his last 7 starts. The ERA is high, the whip's high. He's going to come up on innings issues soon himself. So I do think there's potential there. Obviously still early in his career. Has shown a lot of strikeout ability, but not much faith in Mackenzie Gore right now.
Would you drop Mackenzie Gore or Emmett Sheehan for Matt Manning, who has thrown 2 strong starts in a row? He was at the Royals on Monday, 5 2/3 innings, 2 unearned runs, only 3 strikeouts. What do you think, Scott? Would you drop Gore or Sheehan for Matt Manning?
I actually wouldn't, but it has less to do with Gore and Sheehan than just a lack of interest in Matt Manning. So he had a good start against the Royals, as a right-handed pitcher, in which he struck out only 3.
But 6 no-hit innings against the Blue Jays.
Yeah. It's a fluke.
All right, so we're not making that move. I tried, Matt Manning, if you're out there listening. Last name on this list on the drop-o-meter, Lars Nootbaar. We haven't talked about him in quite some time. 22 games since coming off the IL. He is batting .253 with 2 home runs and a 24% strikeout rate. The problem for Nootbaar this year has been ground balls. He's hitting way too many ground balls. 54% last year, 44% ground ball rate. And Nootbaar has kind of been banged up all season. He had a thumb injury back in April, a back injury, which landed him on the IL in June. And as we've seen with guys like Christian Yelich, back injuries can affect your launch angle and, could affect your ability to lift the ball. So I wonder if maybe that's something that's kind of lingering for Lars Nootbaar. He's down to 62% rostered. Scott, where is Nootbaar on the drop-o-meter?
So in a 5 outfielder league, probably like a 2. I'd be more likely to. Would I be more likely to drop Josh Lowe than him? I guess I shouldn't be. We'll downgrade low to a 2 and 5 outfielder leagues too. All right. So Nootbaar in 3 outfielder leagues. I guess I'll give him the same. Yeah, I'll just give him the same score as Josh Lowe all around. 8 in 3 outfielder leagues, 2 in 5 outfielder leagues. I do think he's more startable than Josh Lowe right now. He's actually had a strong month of July so far. Entered Monday batting .289, 2 homers, 11 runs scored in 13 games. So he's been better recently, and there's still a chance he comes around and lives up to our expectation. By the way, I was talking about how a few years ago Nick Pivetta was the mid-round target at starting pitcher that everybody had to have in fantasy, and it didn't work out. This year, remember, the mid-round targets everybody had to have in fantasy were like Vinny Pasquantino. He kind of got pushed into the early rounds even.
Yeah.
And Lars Nootbaar.
That's true.
And neither of them panned out. Now, I still have, I'm definitely going to be in on Vinny Pasquantino again next year. As for Nootbaar, we'll see how the rest of the year goes. It's not like I'm abandoning them. But this, I have been wanting to make this point for a long time. So now's when I'm choosing to do it. They are exactly why you don't reach for your guys. Because I was very high on both coming in, Pasquantino and Nootbaar. So was everybody else, it turned out. I was frustrated that I was never able to draft them. I got Pasquantino once in an auction league. I think I got Nootbaar twice across all my leagues. And I was targeting them every draft. I was hoping to give them every draft. It just there was always I wasn't willing to pay up for them. I wasn't willing to reach for them to get my guys. And I mean, look what's happened. Good thing I didn't. And so that's something I try to abide by, where when you're considering all the ways you can help your fantasy team, all the tools in your toolbox for building a fantasy team, player evaluation, which is what we spend most of our time on, right? Is this player good? Is this player bad? How good is he going to be this year? Where does he rank? All that stuff. That's not nearly as important as process. So we spend way more time on it, but it's not nearly as important. And I feel like personally, and I imagine most people are this way, when you're just guessing on how a player is going to perform this upcoming season, you're going to be wrong a ton. And so you shouldn't be so set on specific players that you end up throwing out process. And like I said, Nootbaar and Pasquantino are cases in point.
But didn't the process lead us to those players?
It depends what you mean by process.
Well, the things that we look at and get excited about for breakout players, right?
The process of evaluating players led us to those players, yes. But I'm talking about a different process. I'm talking about the process of assembling a team.
And the process of, I guess, putting together a roster throughout the draft, right? And, letting value kind of fall to you, which, again, at times it was Vinny Pasquantino getting pushed inside the top 80 picks. I think his ADP was around 100 or something like that. And Nootbaar started up around 200, and then he got pushed inside the top 150. So people were really excited. And, again, I think there were good reasons to be excited, but, I think maybe just don't push these guys.
Right. No, there were definitely good reasons to be excited, but you need to recognize what you know about a player versus what you're assuming about a player, and not putting the cart before the horse in that way. Yes, there were a lot of reasons to be excited about Pasquantino and Nootbaar. I was very excited about them too. But there came a point where in order to secure them, it would have meant drafting them ahead of players that I knew were good. And I wasn't just assuming they were going to be good. And so, that meant I passed on them a lot, and it was frustrating, but it paid off.
Yeah. Let's quickly hit some news and notes. There wasn't much going on Monday because everything happened over the weekend. Rafael Devers was out of the lineup due to right calf tightness and is considered day-to-day. Cedric Mullins has missed 3 straight due to right quad tightness. Doesn't sound like he'll need an IL stint, however. That's the good news. Salvador Perez has been diagnosed with a grade 1+ left hamstring strain. It sounds like the Royals are optimistic he'll avoid the IL, but will likely miss the next couple days. The Cardinals plan to activate Tyler O'Neill from the IL on Tuesday. Manager Oliver Marmol also said that O'Neill would be the team's everyday left fielder, which sounds like it's bad news for Alec Burleson and Dylan Carlson moving forward. Wade Miley was placed in the IL with left elbow discomfort. Colin Ray is the likely candidate to make Miley's next scheduled start Tuesday against the Phillies. Hunter Harvey was placed in the IL with a right elbow sprain. Kyle Finnegan is likely to step back into the Nationals closer role. In fact, he picked up a save here on Monday. Yandy Diaz is back from the paternity list, which of course meant Jonathan Aranda was optioned back to AAA. And Josh Donaldson has been diagnosed with a high-grade strain in his right calf that could keep him out for the rest of the season. Let's take our final break.
Wait, real quick. Jonathan Aranda coming into Monday. Jonathan Aranda had started 4 of the Rays' past 5 games, and he was optioned twice during that 5-game stretch. Like, just keep him around. You obviously want to play him. It's so stupid.
Welcome to Tampa Bay, Scott. These are the issues constantly with that team. Let's take our final break, and when we return, I've got an email from a listener named Scott, but it's not Scott White. We'll do that right after this.
The world of sports never sleeps, and neither do we.
Welcome to CBS Sports HQ Morning Buzz, Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Eastern Time.
You can catch up on the latest storylines and highlights with expert analysis to get you dialed in.
So grab your coffee and kickstart your day off right.
With Morning Buzz only on CBS Sports HQ.
Welcome back, and a quick reminder to join our Fantasy Baseball Today Facebook group. It is free, and you can find it at facebook.com/groups/Fantasy Baseball Today, or just log on to Facebook and search up Fantasy Baseball Today, and you'll be able to find it. You can hop in, ask your question, whatever it might be, waiver wire, trade, dynasty, keeper, and interact with some of the listeners of the show. Again, our Fantasy Baseball Today Facebook group for free. Make sure to join up. We got an email from a listener named Scott, and he asked, can you guys discuss why Logan Gilbert is so inconsistent and why his home road splits are making him borderline unstartable at home? He's been so good when he's dialed in and on the road, but becoming very frustrating. So let's talk about Logan Gilbert, who faced the Minnesota Twins at home. Obviously, he allowed 2 runs over 5 innings pitched, gave up 7 hits and 1 walk, 5 strikeouts, only 8 swinging strikes on 94 pitches. But I would say, pretty consistent problem for Logan Gilbert in his career. 9 hard hits allowed, 93.7 average exit velocity. The claim about the splits, his home splits aren't so bad, actually. 4.21 ERA in 8 starts at home. It's obviously not egregious or anything. But, Scott, I do think that he is inconsistent. Logan Gilbert is, because it's something Chris talks about a lot with George Kirby. The Mariners, I think, just want their pitchers to throw strikes and throw a lot of them. And as a result, yeah, you'll keep the walks down, but you're going to give up a lot of hits, and you could fall into giving up a lot of hard contact. And that's what we've seen from Logan Gilbert. I mean, look at his fastball this year, 297 batting average against, 516 slug. All of his secondary pitches are under a 200 batting average this year. So I don't know why he doesn't just kind of use the secondaries more, but your latest thoughts on Logan Gilbert and his inconsistencies.
Well, I mean, I'm never going to begrudge a pitcher for throwing strikes and avoiding walks. I think that's something I want to see pitchers do too.
I think there's a fine line though at times, Scott. You know, like if you get 2 strikes, you don't just have to pour one in there. Obviously, you can try and get them to expand the zone a little bit. But
I mean, maybe his pitch selection could improve, because he has 4 pitches that he throws about 15% of the time or more. It's a pretty deep arsenal. And apart from the fastball, the other 3 pitches all have a batting average under 200. So, like, you know, maybe he's just grooving a fastball when a better pitch would work better in certain circumstances. There's a lot to work with here. I think overall Logan Gilbert's had an encouraging follow-up season, and yeah, I wouldn't sweat the home away thing so much either. I mean, part of it's just he's 1-4 at home versus 6-1 on the road, and if you play in a points league, you feel those wins and losses a lot more. And so that makes it worse. But the whip is fantastic at home. The strikeout rate, even better than on the road. Like you said, the ERA is not that high, not so high that you think something weird's going on, as opposed to it just being happenstance. So, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't sweat Logan Gilbert so much. A lot of people have much bigger problems on their pitching staff than him. I agree that if you just look at the strikeout to walk ratio, you kind of feel like his numbers should be better. And certainly all the ERA estimators, xERA, FIP, xFIP, suggest his numbers should be better too. But they're not. His actual ERA isn't that far off. I think he's fine.
For the most part, Logan Gilbert has been, if you just look at the macro level view, 3.65 ERA, 101 whip, almost a strikeout per inning. That's a quality pitcher. So I know, inconsistencies are frustrating for fantasy, but for the most part, he's been a useful pitcher this year. That is Logan Gilbert. Let's quickly talk about 3 players we haven't talked about in a while, Scott, and just kind of acknowledging what they're doing this season. Josh Naylor continues to hit very well. 2 for 5 with his 13th home run. He's batting .310 with 69 RBI and an .856 OPS. He's hitting the ball hard this year. The expected numbers look great for Josh Naylor. He is currently the 5th best first baseman in Roto, averaging 3.2 fantasy points per game, tied for 7th at the position. I don't know that either of us saw this coming, Scott, but it has been a huge leap this season for Josh Naylor.
I mean, he's been such a slow burn in terms of development. Like, I remember when he was an exciting call up for the Padres, but it was like so long ago. And now he's gotten to this point where he's a must-start first baseman, which is great. I mean, I've had trouble reacting to this because I've known so much disappointment with Josh Naylor over the years. But it's time to move him ahead of like the Anthony Rizzos and the Nate Lowe's in my first base rankings, get him up into the top 10 at that position where I've talked about it's hard to find good talent. He's starting against left-handers. He's performing against left-handers. His expected stats are basically in line with his actual stats. Doesn't strike out much. Yeah, it's hard to find much to complain about with Josh Naylor at this point.
Speaking of moving up the rankings, Logan Webb, before the rain delay, had a strong start at the Reds. 7 innings, 2 runs, 7 strikeouts in this one. And he is at a 3.11 ERA, a 108 whip, just over a strikeout per inning. Great control this year. The walks are down. The ground ball rate looks fantastic. And without even talking about it, Scott, we both moved Logan Webb up to our SP 14 recently, and it's certainly deserved with how well he's pitched.
We did not confer on that. Yeah, no, he's just been so reliable, and we've talked a lot this year about how even the high-end pitchers have not been reliable by and large. So, it feels a bit reactive to say, oh, well, he's done well and keeps doing well, so I'm going to trust him more. But here we are.
Here we are indeed. Last name on this list, Bryan Reynolds. Remember that April he had where he was amazing? Well, since the start of May, we're talking about 53 games now. Bryan Reynolds is batting .232 with 4 home runs, 3 steals, still hitting the ball hard. He went on the IL with lower back inflammation in June, so wonder if that's something that's maybe hampered him for quite some time now, Scott. But I mean, this is a pretty big sample. We're talking about a third of the season now where Bryan Reynolds has hit .232. It's time to maybe push him down the rankings.
Yeah, maybe it's not so impressive that Jake Fraley's outscored him in points leagues, huh? Yeah, I know. Been a frustrating player over the past few years. And I don't know what more insight to offer on him than that. Obviously, we've seen Reynolds be better than this in the past, and maybe he can get back to that. But I don't feel like he I don't feel like he gets a lot of benefit of the doubt at this point. And I'm not saying you drop him. Even in 3 outfielder leagues, I want to drop Brian Reynolds. But if you want to bench him, I'm fine with it.
Completely agree. Not benching. I mean, not dropping Brian Reynolds. Would you consider him a buy low if you could?
I mean, just looking at the StatCast page, so his expected batting average is 283. That's really good versus an actual 261 mark. Expected slug 495 versus an actual 438 mark.
All right.
Hard hit rate is 91st percentile. I mean, it's a lot of red on the StatCast page for Brian Reynolds. I don't want to oversimplify it, but between that and his history, I'd say it's more likely than not he does bounce back, which is why I'm suggesting don't drop him. So yeah, buy low, but you should be able to buy pretty low at this point.
All right, that is Brian Reynolds, and let's wrap up with just got one leftover here, a pitching leftover, Dane Dunning. He joins Charlie Morton in their revenge tour for me calling them busts in the second half. 7 innings of 2-run ball with 4 strikeouts up against the Tampa Bay Rays. Still allowed a lot of hard contact in this game. He does not get whiffs. I don't really know how he's doing it, Scott, but yeah, Dane Dunning is doing it. 2 earned runs or fewer in 5 of his last 6 starts.
Well, and the most impressive thing to me is that 3 of his last 5, he's gone 7 innings or more in 3 of his last 5. I think 4 of the 5, it's been 6 or more. So even when he was pitching well earlier, it was still easy to write him off because he wasn't giving you enough length. But now he's giving you both. It's a long second half. I wouldn't back off of your second half bust prediction yet.
That's true. That's why I need you around, Scott, because you keep me grounded. You keep me in check because sometimes I just get these crazy thoughts in my head and I overreact too quickly. But
put on a Colorado Rockies tie-dyed T-shirt.
Yeah, well, yeah, they took 2 out of 3 against the Yankees, so I'm a Rockies fan now.
You're changing allegiances. That's how reactive you are.
Yeah, speaking of the Yankees, they're so bad, man. They lost to the Angels in extra innings. I don't want to talk about it. All right, the bullpen updates. The call to the bullpen for the Dodgers. Evan Phillips was unavailable. Ryan Brazier picked up his 2nd save of the season. For the Rangers, Aroldis Chapman struck out the side with the game tied in the 9th inning, and he wound up with the win. For the Cardinals, Jordan Hicks gave up 3 hits, but picked up his 8th save. 58% roster for Hicks, so still could be out there in some leagues. For the Nationals, Kyle Finnegan recorded the final 4 outs for his 12th save. He struck out 3, and he's pitched well for some time now. He's got the ERA down to 3.32. Kyle Finnegan, 33% rostered. Could make for a good pickup, assuming he's not traded away from the Washington Nationals. For the Tigers, Alex Lang struck out 2 for his 15th save, and he's also below 70% rostered. Scott, how would you rank Jordan Hicks, Alex Lang, Kyle Finnegan?
I'm going to go Alex Lang number 1, and then Hicks 2 and Finnegan 3. Finnegan a distant 3rd.
Okay, let's wrap up with to stream or not to stream, and we will start with Tuesday. And I think we said Brian Wu versus the Twins. Logan Allen is making his return to the Guardians. He's at the Pirates. I think that one's pretty good. Do you want to chance it with a Jamison Tyone versus Nationals or Carlos Carrasco versus White Sox?
Probably not. I don't like to chance it much to begin with. But if you're making me pick a 3rd, that would be the 3rd.
Tyone or Carrasco?
Carrasco.
Okay. On Wednesday, I think Aaron Savali at the Pirates. That stands out. I like that one quite a bit.
Yeah.
I think Christopher Sanchez has pitched pretty well, and he's going up against the Brewers. I think that one's fine. Kenta Maeda.
I don't trust him.
Kenta Maeda at the Mariners. That's pretty good.
Yeah. I wonder if he's going to hold up again. I know things kind of took a turn for the worse in his last start, and he's just been very brittle over the past couple years. So I'm a little worried about Maeda. But at Seattle, I guess I'd go with it. Yeah, I like Savali the best here. I'm kind of afraid to even say it.
I think I know where you're going.
Dean Kramer against the Dodgers.
That's exactly where I thought you were going.
Win number 11, baby.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, if Grayson Rodriguez couldn't do it,
Ugh.
well, we know maybe Grayson Rodriguez couldn't do it, but Dean Kramer can. His former organization, Revenge Game.
Ooh, I like a good revenge game, Scotty.
Yeah.
All right, you take Dean Kramer. I'm not taking Dean Kramer.
I'm going to take Kramer over Maeda. How do you like that?
I don't like it at all, but I hope it works out. And I would take Christopher Sanchez up against the Brewers. Team Name Tuesday. We'll finish up with this, and this one came from Garrett on Twitter. And this is a Red Hot Chili Peppers reference here, Scotty. Bayo, listen what I say, yeah. It doesn't, it's supposed to rhyme, but that is the song Snow by Red Hot Chili Peppers. You should check it out. It's really good.
Okay.
I really like it. From Trevor, Return of the McClanahan. I guess that's supposed to be a Return of the Mac.
Yeah. These aren't so good so far.
All right. Greg Bird is the word.
I mean, it's a classic, but kind of outdated at this point.
Yeah. I wonder if Adam Azer's ears are ringing in his sleep right now while we're talking about Greg Bird. You would catch a trout. You would catch a trout with Yu Darvish, Alex Wood, and Mike Trout.
No, that's dumb.
Yoshida Island.
Is that like Yoshi Island? But
I think so.
Okay.
Woo is on first.
All right. You could probably do better things with Woo's name than that.
Steer the Flying Rutschman.
That's not bad.
And
the best of a bad batch.
Strand by your Manning.
Did you notice, by the way, just going to ignore the team name. Encarnacion Strand is just going with Encarnacion on the back of his jersey.
Really? I did not notice that.
Interesting choice. I wondered, I've wondered with the hyphenated names that get so long, and I've long wondered what happens when hyphenated names start hyphenating with other hyphenated names and it becomes 4 names hyphenated together. Are they just going to do a spiral of name around the number on the back of the jersey? Maybe not. Maybe they just arbitrarily choose a name, whichever parent they liked more, I guess.
I guess. Yeah, I wondered if we were going to get maybe almost a full circle out of Encarnacion Strand on the back of the jersey. Yeah. So, but you say he's going with Encarnacion, huh?
Yep. Right. I think he's still officially listed as Encarnacion Strand, but it's just Encarnacion on the back of the jersey.
All right, let's finish up these team names from Alex. Get Up, Strand Up.
All right.
That's apparently a Bob Marley song. From Carson, Mickey Money. That's a Billy Joel reference.
Sure.
From Raymond, Wham Bam, thank you, fam.
It's not bad.
From Todd, The Curious Case of Byron Buxton.
Kind of a stretch, but okay.
From Doug, House of the Rising Snell.
Doesn't work.
From Corey, Morton Sears a Woo.
Too many names, but I kind of like it.
And from Matthew, Cabbage, Bradish, and Caratini Farmer.
Cabbage, radish, and what kind of
carrots?
What kind of produce is caratini? It's supposed to be like carrots?
Yes.
Doesn't quite work, but especially given the fact that Farmer is a baseball name. There's a couple of them. Kyle Farmer, Buck Farmer.
Yeah.
It almost works.
All right. Well, Scott was very unimpressed by this week's Team Name Tuesday. So we're going to need
step it up, folks.
Yeah, we need people to come with the fire next week. So make sure to send those in. We're going to wrap there for Scott. I am Frank. Thanks as always for tuning in to Fantasy Baseball today. Please make sure to follow and leave a 5-star rating on Apple or Spotify. We'll be back again tomorrow. Bye-bye.